Happy Friday, everyone. It is time for the Goat and the Dog. We're talking fantasy for round 2, the first of our early bye rounds. I'm Warnie, coach of the Warn Dogs, and this is Drew Jones.
Coach of the Mountain Goats and host of the Goat Fantasy Podcast.
The Goat Fantasy Podcast is goating things at the moment too. Plenty of great drops in the feed, so make sure you subscribe there if you're not already, because it has been very nice to have Drew's dulcet tones in the ears talking some fantasy throughout the week as well. Going all right?
Everything's good, mate. We're trying to add in a couple of more regular pods to mix with the newsy ones, so hopefully there'll be something for everyone.
He's very, very good. All right, let's get stuck in. Last night, we had probably a very, not very fantasy relevant game at all with our Hawks and our Swans. Not a bad game to watch, with the Hawks getting up 1 ton, and that was John Newcomb, so probably just draft relevant for most people there with that one. A couple of names, though, I guess are worth mentioning in there because... Goat was basically live tweeting the game as well from the fantasy perspective. I was getting my notifications because I've got 2 accounts where I get notifications. That is at Drew Jones and also at Goat Fantasy, and they were popping off. But we saw some players there that are very interesting. I think Joyce Wrong's probably the most popular of all. 59 points, so solid there. Good for our cash gen. Most of us probably have got him sitting on the pine and had the E on. If you were in a position to loop that, we're probably not doing that one though, are we?
No, I wouldn't have thought so. I think the names that stood out for me, Warnie, were the guys I'm looking at who we might be able to get at a reasonable price when we're trying to upgrade. So Dylan Moore with that low score built in from opening rounds. He looks back to his best now that the Scissor Sister story has been released. He looks like a new man. And then Brodie Grundy, what was that, an 89 last night to follow up his low score the week before. So if there comes a time where we want to go the 2 big dog rucks, or we're forced to do that, I feel like he's going to be more affordable, which is going to be a positive for
anyone
us.
That did start Brodie Grundy and then had that 51 last week and saw 6 points at quarter time would have been absolutely shattered, but he did come home strong, so he ended up having a 37-point final quarter to help get him up to a very reasonable score in the end there of 88. But that is the story of the rucks a little bit, isn't it? I think it's still going to evolve. These first few rounds may not look exactly what they might look like later on in the season, but yeah, it's something where most of us are probably thinking twice about where we are with these rucks, and we don't necessarily know the right answer to that yet. Out of that too, Connor McDonald, 89. So if anyone did go there, I think you're getting a tick from that mid-price thing with what he's done those last couple of weeks. But the big thing for him, though, massive drop in CBAs. He only had 4 of them in the end last night.
Yeah, and he still played well. I think ultimately he's not the smash pick, I think, that we were hoping he would be. But I think we'd already realised that by the time, the first lockout was. So we haven't been hurt by Connor McDonald, but he's a good player and he'll score well no matter what the role, but he's not going to bash out consistent 105s. And so, we just have to take that into account. Good draft player, but he's probably not for us.
Well, I'm on 0. I'm sure the Goats are on 0 at the moment, so let's hope we get some points over this weekend. It is the first of our bye rounds, so just a reminder that Brisbane, Carlton, Collingwood and Geelong are on the bye. Sub those guys onto your bench if you haven't done that already. And hopefully you did activate your Errol Goulden trade last night, so you can go and edit it, obviously, but we did need to make sure you pulled that trigger last night. And if you're listening to this now and you haven't done that, I'm sorry. Do it next week because he's out for 4 months. But let's get stuck into these games. Tonight should be a ripping game, and that is Adelaide and the Western Bulldogs over in Adelaide Oval. We do see Isaac Rankin is back in, and Toby Murray is out managed. No sign of the Rob there, except he's an emergency, of course, when Toby Murray was out. He did play limited time on ground, so it would have been super unlucky if we did see Lockie McAndrew go with another big as well off the back of that change. But Jordan Croft's in for the Dogs and Will Lewis has been omitted. So the big question here, I guess, is the fact that Rankin's back. What does this look like for Rochelle, who has, started very well for us if you were a starter?
Yeah, so I think if Rankin had been playing round 1, then Rochelle would have been a really popular target for us to trade in this week because we would have got a good look at how the midfield mix works with both of them in the team. Because Rochelle was the one sort of mid-price forward that performed well in round one. So I think this is actually a really critical week for us to get a look at what the Crows do. And so I think from an outside perspective, we all feel like Rochelle, Rankin, Dawson would be an amazing midfield three for Matty Nicks to lean on for the majority of the time in terms of the dynamic nature of what that would bring. But we just have to see it. So tonight's a really great test case for us. And, Braden Cook is probably going to be one of the most popular trade-ins for the week. And we also get another look at what he's going to do, with that extra ball user in the team and how that shakes out his role. But he looked pretty solid on the wing and then, trying to roll back and get some possessions in the back half. I think that's the role that Matty Nicks wants him to play. And there's a couple of guys to come back, once we see Mitch Hinge back in the team and then Dan Curtin later in the season. That's going to change up the way that looks. But I think right now Braden Cook is someone you should be seriously considering in your team. And then, with best 18, it takes out some of the risk and he's still very cheap. So the Crows have got a few moving parts here. And, of course, because they don't have a bye, does make their players a bit more attractive, doesn't it? And there is a particular guy down back who we should talk about.
Wayne Miller, the correct W. Miller, maybe some people are saying. So, I don't know. Great score last week, great in the preseason. And I guess the question is, are things just clicking for him? Because we've probably been a little bit, he's been someone that we think can put it together at some points, but we've never seen it consistently. Obviously, a few body issues and all that along the way as well. But should we consider this? Is it a bit of a cash play as one thing, a mid-price player without a buy, rather than trying to buy into a premium this week?
Yeah, so it's a great throw at the stumps in fantasy. And so because I've got Cook, it sort of leaves me with one extra trade to try to do something with. And there's going to be people around who started with Murdoch and, one of Murdoch or Cook or both who feel like they can do something this week. And because it's best 18 and because he's not, carrying a massive price tag, I think there's some merit to having a look at it this week. When you look at what Zorko scored against the Western Bulldogs in round one, there's points on offer for defenders. And he's a designated kicker and he's had the role in preseason and in their first game. So I feel like for me, this is a risk-free move because I'm doing all things going well, there'll be an upgrade to an Uber Premium next week. And if Rankin completely flops or gets injured, because we know that's possible for him, then he can be the guy that I move. Otherwise, it ends up being a Parish or whatever. But I am ticking off the play this week because the premiums on offer, Warnie, when you look at them, you can probably have a flag on all of them. The only one you wouldn't flag is Jackson, but he's the one premium that we probably don't need. So I think this is the week to have a crack and a throw at the stumps.
That's where I'm feeling at the moment. And I'm probably passing up Cook for him is maybe the way that I'm looking, and it might just be that idea of the structure in the side for that. Probably off the back of, and we'll get to that later, but Todd Marshall was probably my trade out all week. But now that he's playing and just looking ahead at his draw, I think he's the one to keep for me. So, and that's where my thinking's gone. Anyway, just for the Bulldogs, I guess the only things there, Bont is obviously a popular play, but these guys have got a bye next week. Are you in a camp of just don't pick guys with a bye coming up? Or, is this a time to get the Bont because he is off to a great start and you might be able to get those leg up points this week? Or do we just play this long game? Be smart.
Yeah, if Bontempelli didn't have that slightly lower score built in, then I would probably be more in favour of it because you would just be swapping your Goulden buy with your Bont buy and then you get a guy who you're going to keep for the entirety of the season. So that's why in Supercoach, I've been saying this week, I would tick off Goulden to Bont if you've got the cash because I think we all saw Goulden as someone who was potentially M1 and someone we're going to keep the entire year. So much different in fantasy to Supercoach with the limited trade. So as much as I love Bont, I don't think, despite how good his score was last week, he hasn't made himself a must-have right now when you consider the guys that are coming off the bye next week who you can grab.
Let's push into our Super Saturday. We have got Richmond and Gold Coast playing at the G. Tom Brown, Dion Prestia, Makaiti Lefau and Nick Flostone come back into the team. Campbell Gray's omitted, as is Josh Gibcus. Maybe a little bit of management there possibly for him. Jonty Fall has been suspended and Ryan Mansell out with a bit of a wrist injury. Suns have got Ballard back, which is great. News story there for him. Bailey Humphrey, after being a late out, is back into the side, and they've omitted Oscar Adams and Jai Farah. Richmond, we've probably nailed everything here. I think probably the main thing would be if you're in the Roy boat and haven't got the Gorilla, you need to make sure you get him. That is a must have here. But out of this game here, we've got the Suns with an upcoming bye. If you are riding through that one with the Noah Anderson play, again, Roy, he's done that one. But we should see pretty good scores here from the Suns, you would think, and might be in your calculations for a VC.
Yeah, so that's just interesting, isn't it? If you've got English and Anderson, do you go English VC into a C on Nando and take advantage of this second of the great matchups? Like, I feel like for the guys that picked Anderson, the coaches that picked Anderson, he probably didn't quite get the score last week we were hoping for. So hopefully there's a ceiling score in it. I mean, they should be motivated in this game. They don't get many opportunities at the MCG. Expansive game style on a big ground. Damien Hardwick knows how to coach at the MCG as well. It feels like it's going to be, a potentially pretty big day for the Gold Coast. But, outside of Petrarca and Anderson, there's probably not that many Suns that we've picked in our side, is there? Because apart from Lombard, because of the bye. So we're not super invested in the Suns from that perspective. And then for the Tigers, a Lawler, are we persisting with that if you went there?
Yeah, it's a tough one. I wouldn't be too keen to have him, is where I'm at, but it might be where he sits in the pecking order of what your trade priorities might be in that fix-up stuff, because you can even then say Suns fix-up stuff like Ezekiel and someone that you might need to, if you did go there, switch him across to one of those better rookies. That might be one of the plays that you need to consider as well. But, yeah, I think you'd have to stick with Lawler. We might see things a little bit different, like even just thinking of defence, Flostone being back in there, for example. He probably gets more ball than Gibcus, for example, if you're looking at the change there in that and what that might mean as well for your mate Banksy, and also Jaden Short, who had a nice game as well. So, but these Tigers, I think it's going to be a little bit of a work in progress, isn't it, for them to see exactly where they are and where that mix is. I think Lawler, as much as we all had hope, I think we just know that he's going to be that impact type player. He might hit the CBAs and that sort of stuff, but his work's going to be done forward of the ball.
I mean, I think his career fantasy scoring arc will basically follow Dusty's, which is he'll peak at a 90 or a 95, probably as a forward centre when he hits his absolute peak. So, maybe we'll have him that year, but he's not going to be, he's probably going to be someone we talk about every preseason, but he's not necessarily going to come through and be a must pick for us. I'm interested in this Tigers backline. If we want to talk, draft a little bit here, like Jaden Short's a viable option. Sam Banks, you probably bumped him up your draft order a little bit. And then I was surprised how much they wanted the ball in Grill's hands, but you can see why, because he's a genuine dasher. Like, he's got a bit of zip and pace and he's a good ball user. But I think everyone's surprised how much they used him. So when you add Vlosten in as another mouth to feed, there'll be a lot of ball down back for the Tigers, but certainly it seems like between all of their defenders, they're all probably going to average, 80 to 90, and no one's going to blow out for a massive year. They don't have that A1 distributor. So, I'm looking at across my teams where Sam Banks has popped his head into most of them, and I'm thinking he's probably not going to be a knockout pick.
GWS and St Kilda, that's at NG Stadium, 4:15 game for that one. No changes for the Giants, so we see them go in as they are, all the little things. Toby Green still named on the ball with that. They've got some players ticking along. They've got their upcoming bye as well, as do the Saints, but they've brought back Rowan Marshall after the concussion. Liam Stocker is in. Jack McRae out injured, who did have limited time on ground last week, and Isaac Keeler has been omitted. Now, let's start with these Saints. You got to go and see your mate Ross the other day. Did you? He was, without even having a crack at you directly, he was having a crack at all of us, wasn't he? Because we're not on his side of the fence, and we leave this mediocre life almost. He said. Yeah,
I've tried to ascertain from the club whether he meant to be punching down on every single person in the world who doesn't
not an AFL footballer.
Play or coach AFL, or whether it was just as an athlete, you can choose to be at a big club who's competing for flags and trying to win things, or you can, take the money and go to a lower club or whatever. Whatever he meant, he was trying to offend someone. And it sort of felt like he came to the press conference with this idea that he was going to redirect us away from the fact that they are 0-2. And I think that's classic Ross. But yeah, he tried to walk out of the presser after about 4.5 or 5 minutes. And I wanted to ask a few more questions, particularly about the game on Saturday, which he didn't end up wanting to answer. So I tried for Roy to ask about Marcus Windhager and whether he would have a tagging role, but didn't get much from him there. And we didn't get much from him about Wanganeen Miller's role going forward. So yeah, it was a fruitless trip to Moorabbin, I would say.
Yeah, I guess some of the questions we had, and I did ask you the question over text about Jack Carroll and his spot, because we do see Stocker back in. Where do you see that all rolling? Like, is he going to be someone that we might be sweating on week to week?
Yeah, interesting, isn't it? I spoke to someone at the club who said that they see Carroll as filling the Jimmy Webster role.
Okay.
And I think for the most part, from a defensive perspective, he's been okay. But Liam Stocker's just sort of sitting there, and he's normally been a guy that Ross has been able to lean on as a defensive lockdown player previously. So I think they're still trying to work out what their best mix is there. And then Charlie Banfield is the other one. So he can play sort of wing or half back. And I didn't realize how big this guy is. Drew Banfield was, short and, not a big guy by any stretch, but Charlie is big for an 18-year-old. I think someone said to me, it looks like he's eaten another 18-year-old. That's how big he is. So I think he's very close to a debut. And Filippo, I don't know if he's going to play. He looked pretty proppy at training.
Right.
Liam Ryan's a bit more. It's a bit hard to know, but I wouldn't be surprised if there was a late change here. But certainly Rowan Marshall is in and he's fine. So I think forward status for Rowe isn't too far away. Yeah,
that's going to be the thing, and that's the positive about him playing. Obviously, everyone wants all the best players out there playing, but he should be able to hit the numbers, as in the games played and all that sort of stuff, to get that forward status, because that might give you a little bit of respite if you were maybe an early drafter, because I always feel like he went, in most drafts that I did, a little bit earlier than he maybe should have done if you were considering him as just a sole ruck or the ruck in your team. So that is an issue. All right. So Philippou, that is one that is a watch. This is that 4:15 game on the Saturday. So sort of make your plans for that just in case you've got him, because I think a few people probably want to back him as well. I'd probably just want to get off. Mostly off the back of the score is one thing, and the cash gen there, and then it's just a little reminder. I think some of these players remind us at times about their bodies and that they can be a little bit of a headache and things can happen quickly. But nice work if you were able to get a nice ton off your bench with the first activation of the sub 50% time on ground rule. So congrats on that one. All right, let's not forget. I would say let's not forget Filippo got injured 5 times last year. Yeah. So this is very much, on brand for him. Just quickly, Joe Fonte in Supercoach. Yep. I'd be ticking that off this week. His price rise will come after the GWS Saints game. And he's made a very nice start to the year. Fremantle and Melbourne play at up the stadium on Saturday night, or pretty much in the afternoon because of the time difference these days at the moment until daylight saving kicks in. But Christopher Sherry is in, so he is 230k forward there. Hayden Young out with a hamstring. I don't know if you saw Freako's tweet saying he's missed 25 games with hamstring injuries across his career, which really sucks because he is a gun and he has looked good as well with what he's been doing. So 1 to 2 weeks they're naming that up as. So I think it's a fantasy classic. You are doing the trade there. Anyway, no changes for Melbourne. I'm hoping for Melbourne that we see something a little bit different than last week, considering some of the players that we may have invested in. Jack Steele got himself to a respectable score in the end, and this is the worst thing. I've been saying it the last 3 weeks, that he's probably one that's going to be affected by these rules a lot, and still went there. And then even Caleb Windsor as well, what's his impact going to be? Because it has felt like he is that little bit of a running impact player as such, so hopefully the ball can end up in his hands and not get burnt too much as well along the way. So, what have you got your thoughts on out of these Ds? And, well, let's talk about the the Dockers as well, because there are a couple of options worth considering.
Well, I'm worried that Windsor is the Lawler of the backline, so high impact player, but not necessarily a massive scorer. So I'm actually trading Windsor out this week.
Are you? Right.
I probably, I would have rathered, in a perfect world, had a look at him for one more week. But just the way the way the cash works for my team, one of the mid prices needs to be sacrificed. So that's going to be Windsor this week. And if he dunks 100 on my head, then well done, well played. So I think if you have Jack Steele, this is his last week. Like, you need to look at him this week and make a decision. Are you investing in him for the long run here, or can you move him to Dacos or Holmes next week? Because in best 18 scoring, we want a ceiling. And right now, if Jack Steele's punching out 85, 90s for you and you paid $1 million, I'm not sure you're quite getting bang for buck here. So I think this is a good test. See what he does against a pretty strong Fremantle midfield, and then you can make a decision next week. I'm interested in your thoughts on Cozzy Pickett. There was a part of me this week that was like, do I jump on him now? He was tagged and produced that score, and he was in Darwin during the week. Is he going to end up being a top 6 forward, do you think, for us?
I think he is, but I don't know if he'll ever get away from us. That's probably my thing on that, is that we can be upgrading to him with still thinking he's priced around that 90 mark, basically, because that's almost what he did. I had him last year and enjoyed, the good times, and they were mostly good times with having him, because there can be a ceiling there in some of his games, but it can also be that hard watch of just knowing the role. Like, his CBAs are going to be there, and they were last year, but we'll talk about dusty heaps, but he's going forward of the ball. Like, that's his role. Go on, have a crack in the guts, and he then just pushes forward. So he doesn't necessarily stay as that midfielder type, and that's what it really was last year. So I like him. I think you could do it, and that's not an issue, but you're probably getting what you're paying for as such. You may not necessarily be getting the value, is probably the thing from that. But then again, locking away a top 6 forward, if you were doing that from your Filippo, like, that might be a nice move, because you're actually probably fixing up maybe that mid-price issue in your forward line, and you were getting that with someone there, because realistically the forwards, I'm feeling like we're not going to be able to rotate too many dudes through there that can fill out the rookie spots, if you want to call them those. So, yeah.
So Sarong this week is the interesting one, and Jackson. So they're two of the premiums that you could try to get to this week. Mm-hmm. I just don't think if you started English and you've got McAndrew at R2, I just don't think that's worthwhile moving, especially with McAndrew solo rucking.
You just got to back it, don't you? Like, there was nothing from last week that we saw with McAndrew that would make you jump off that, essentially.
Yeah, and then with Sarong, I had a look at how I felt with him in my team. But Fremantle's low scoring, like their low fantasy scoring across the board, just worried me. And the fact that he scored best in the last quarter, which is when they played their worst, when they slowed the game down too much. I don't think Fremantle want to do that. And I think Sarong is like more of a 90 to 95 when they're playing fast and they're playing the way that they really want to. But he is one of the premium options this week that makes sense on paper. But I just think, just do it with caution. I'm not sure that Sarong is I think he's better in real life, I think. And we need to be cautious here if we want to bring him in.
Yeah, and with all our talk that we've had over the last couple of weeks anyway, with these rule changes, he is in that prototype of the guys that may suffer. So, but he did take some marks. That was the nice thing about his game last week. So LJ there is still with Darcy. That's the other little part of that. So Mason Cox is an emergency. Interesting to see how they roll with that over the next few weeks as well. I think Darcy had sub 50% time on ground, so something to consider and to know about what goes on there. Some people have asked about Luke Jackson. Does he get DPP? I think he probably actually just rucked too much in his midfield role, and that's probably the thing that will hurt that. All right, we'll go on to Sunday. A couple of games here. First one is at 3:15 Eastern Time, but 2:45 over in South Australia at Adelaide Oval. Port Adelaide coming off a shocking loss. Bombers coming off a shocking loss, which is going going to make this a ripping game. But we've got some fantasy relevance here. Lukosius is in with Mead, Will Brodie, Josh Lay, and also Jordan Sweet, and named in the ruck, which is an important thing to know from that. They're out so far. Ollie Lord's been omitted and Lockie Jones is injured. The Bombers bring in Kako, Gresham and Saad El Hawley. They are in no outs for the Dons as yet. So the big news out of this one is Jordan Sweet has been named and named in the ruck as mentioned there, meaning that it sounds like, and I did listen to Josh Carr this morning on the radio pretty much saying, yep, he's going back to go and work on his craft as such. So that's out. And I know a lot of coaches went with Vizentini, the high Viz, at R3. So that's a bit of a setback because he only made 10 grand last week for you as well.
Yep, you just got to chalk that up to a bad pick, unfortunately. But to be fair to those who did it, dropping the guy that you pick as your number one ruckman after one game is a fairly aggressive coaching move. But also, Jordan Sweet's just a better ruckman and a better player. So I'm just sort of not sure why they got a bit cute, I think. So, yeah, it's a bit of a spanner in the works. And to be honest, it's a blow for Blackiston owners because I think he would have scored better against Dante, to be honest. I think Jordan might have a dine out here against Blackiston. The only thing that works in our favour is hopefully Dante, as you said, goes back to the Sandful to work on his craft, which does mean it's not a 2-on-1 situation. There's not many rucks that can hold up against Reeves and Meek. Even Grundy last night didn't score to his normal level. So hopefully Blackiston will be able to compete better for longer because there's a world where he scored 62 last week and that's absolutely fine, or 65, but it ends up being a 47 and looks pretty gross in our team. So hopefully we can hang on for another week or two with Blackiston, but ultimately it doesn't look like it's going to be the pick we were hoping for, does it?
So my hand is up a little bit here, and I'm not going to apologise about it because everything, you didn't have to do it, and people are blaming me, you made us pick Blackiston. Everything added up there, though, in my opinion, and still I'm backing that. However, I would like to back it, but he's my out this week, and I think it's probably because of what the Bombers have got coming up and the rucks that he's going against. I'm bullish enough that he's in that role. It should be fine. He had 53 at three-quarter time. So, as you said, that should have been a 60-plus score, and we would have been laughing and thinking this was a great pick. But to give away a couple of free kicks there in the last quarter and drop down at the sub-50, that is what hurts. But, yeah, you're getting rid of your Windsor. I think I'm just going to do the Blackiston. I guess that was more of a money thing for you with what you were looking at, I assume, because I think I still back Windsor to outscore him anyway. Yeah,
no doubt. This is not a points decision. This is a money decision. Unfortunately, I think if we were playing if we were playing full team without a bye this week, I assume we would all drop Blackiston to the bench and we would play Grill and Jakes ahead of him. So ultimately, if you treat him as a rookie, then we're just playing rookie roulette with Blackiston right now. And best 18, we can sort of get away with it. So I don't think keeping him is going to hurt you, but you just have to, if Farrow comes in 2 weeks, I'm just going to go Blackiston to Farrow.
Yep, makes sense.
And move on. And then so Merritt, Caldwell.
Yep, these are the other guys.
Would you entertain bringing them in as a premium this week if you just wanted to get points on field?
Yes, I would. And I think I'm Zach ahead of Caldwell, but it's a hard one. I'm still worried now. This is where disappointed that you didn't get out to Tullamarine to go and press old mate Brad Scott for what he did last week with our midfield in the time. And that was the thing. At the end of the day, it was the time on ground, which Zach still had. He did sort of finish really well to get a good score there. Obviously, they all started well. All those midfielders, what did we have? First half in the 70s for Caldwell. Zach was right up there, etc. But the time on ground was a weird thing. So I think Zach's the one that I'd still back in. There is that little bit of a thing in my head about going, what is his role exactly going to be? Because we've seen some stuff in the preseason, but I'm going to take that as a little bit of management off the back of Origin etc., because he should be in the midfield. That's where he needs to be. But, yeah, what does the Bombers midfield mix look like? What does the time on ground mix? This is the questions, but I think that's just me playing devil's advocate a little bit with that one. But I think, Zach, I'd be very happy to go him as a premium because, he's done it 10 years in a row, 100 plus, and he can do that. It's probably just the game theory as such now is going, are you paying too much for him? And are you better off holding? And this is where everyone's talking about that cash in the bank because you're probably getting someone that you would much prefer next week.
So I would trade out Archie Roberts if you're able to make that happen this week.
Right.
But you're holding, I would say.
Yeah, of course. Named on the half-back. Surely we just take those team sheets. But I'm interested in seeing what these teams look like at 5 o'clock and we see where that sits. Like if we do lose, a defender there to help make that happen. So I'm very interested. He holds for a week to see where he can go to next week if he has to go, which is part of my thinking as well. Parrish, you're holding as well?
Yeah, I'd like to get a look at him for one more week. I think the game didn't suit him on Friday night after quarter time because of the way that the Hawks were able to completely obliterate Essendon off turnover. I can't think of a game that would less suit Parrish than that. Yeah. And he started well when the game was tighter, when there was a bit more contested ball. He was good in the first quarter. So I'm interested to see what it looks like this week. I could see him staying in my team, medium term, if he can show that he can score in a game that's played a bit more in tight. The question is, Warnie, do those games exist?
Yeah.
Maybe
small
not.
Sample size, but we haven't seen a lot of it.
Yeah. And if Parrish knocks out a 70 this week, then he's gone. I'll trade him out. But I'm interested to see what it looks like, and I think a lot of us are. But if you traded out Parrish this week, I wouldn't blame you.
Your Eagles are playing against North Melbourne there in the Sunday night game. Coming into the squad for the Eagles, well, out is Tom Cole, who's been omitted, but Schoenberg, Tim Kelly, Liam Baker, Harry Edwards, so probably a couple of those guys are locked in there to come in, you would be saying. North Melbourne, no outs, but in is Cullen Coleman-Jones, Zach Banch and Robbie Hanson Jr. Rightio. The number one thing here is Murdoch. We are obviously picking him in our teams if you don't have him yet because he's probably right at the top of the list, would you say? Milan Murdoch, who has been named on the bench just quietly.
Oh, we have to bring him in. I think what we can lean on here is how good he was. He was basically the Eagles' best player. If he had a middling week, then I think we would have ignored him for multiple reasons. But with Kelly and Elijah Hewitt sort of breathing down his neck a little bit, his job security going into the weekend wouldn't have been fantastic, but he just performed so well. So I think we can pick him with some confidence. And then, Dev Robertson was awesome for us. Yep. West Coast have presented a little bit of value. Josh Lindsay, very lucky to get 66. I actually don't know how he got there, to be honest. It was looking like a really gross 40. So I don't think maybe he's not going to be the scorer that we hoped. Too much Duggan, too much Cole. The Eagles need to sort that out. But I thought McCarthy played quite well, although none of us have really gone there. But yeah, from a North Melbourne perspective, there's a bit to work through here, isn't there?
There is. Colby McKerch is probably the big one. So we heard that in the pre-game, we heard Mickey Barlow talking about the fact that he would play limited minutes, and that came to fruition. He didn't go his sub 50% time on ground, but it was very limited. And the role that he did, it was in that midfield, but then also a bit forward. So there wasn't any of that nice half-back role that we probably all pre-season wanted Colby for. So he, for me, is a trade out. I think you just jump off now off the back of that. And I think Clarko during the week has pretty much said that he'll increase slightly. Like it'll just build slightly. It's not like he's going, oh no, he's now going to go back to his 80% time on ground.
I found the Colby McKerch positional arc over the last year has just been fascinating. Is it possible that Colby has just said, "I want to be a midfielder"?
100%. That's what he is and was. And this is also the thing from that. He was a gun at like the lower league level and racked up big points. Like he in his 2 years of TAC Cup or Coach League or Talent League, whatever we want to call it, he was the highest averaging player over those 2 years out of that draft class in the midfield role. So that's what he sees himself as. And he's damaging forward of the ball too. It's just that we have got very lucky with some of these players that do have that apprenticeship off the half back. And if you are a ball winner anyway and can use the ball very cleanly like he can, that we get used to that as a fantasy coach. But his future is most definitely in the midfield, and he would want that too. Like, he's excited about that as the role. Yeah,
it's interesting, isn't it? So you obviously have to trade him out if you've got him in your team. I don't think there's any way around that. So Hardiman hasn't come in for the Roos, which is good for Blamires.
Yep.
Actually a bit of a relief, to be honest. And then the Luke Parker stuff is interesting. Behind the ball last week, whether that's a long-term spot for him or if it's more sort of short-term and due to match fitness and whatnot, which has been some of the discussion this week. So, yeah, there's a few moving parts at North which have made them very interesting. At least we know we can lean pretty heavily on Harry Sheasel and, Tristan Sherry, 0 hit-outs in the first quarter last week, but I feel like he's got a pretty big score on him this week
against Flynn. Yes, that might be the thing there. Yeah. Would you go with Dylan Stevens for a little bit of a fun run because of the cash, or is that just one of those ones where you go, better not?
I feel like the ball just lived on his wing. I feel like that must have been the thing that happened. But,
dream game.
No, I would not. I liked him. I like him as a 1 week play in draft, or someone who you can mess around with off the waivers, but no, I don't think so.
No, well, there we go. They're the 7 games that we've got for this weekend. Harry Sheasel, could he be captain in that last one? Do you think he'd be a nice move there? Because Cow didn't put him in his top 5, which surprised me a little bit, actually.
Yeah, I guess the only concern would be does Dev follow him around? The Eagles might mess around with that. I don't know, but at the moment, I'd be tossing up between Shees and Anderson for the C after the VC on Tim tonight. But yeah, I don't mind it as a throw at the stumps for Shees.
There are a few options there for that. Your trades, what have you settled on, or what does it currently sit at here on this Friday?
Yeah, so Windsor down to Murdoch and Goulden across to Wayne Millerer, which leaves me about 600K in the bank.
Have you got a plan?
Or about 650. Yeah, so the current plan would be Dacos and Max Holmes in next week.
Both of them.
Anderson and Parrish. That, obviously things can change and things can go wrong. But if I have to hold Anderson, that's okay. I've got the cash to upgrade to get a premium next week, which will be Dacos. And if all works out and I can, in a perfect world, then I can get 2 premiums in, which I'm pretty excited about.
That is exciting. Going shopping, and for me, I'm going Blackiston is going to be my move to Millerer, and then Errol has gone down to Murdoch, and that should hopefully have me set up. Fingers crossed. I'm going to cop a hit this week because I have got Nick Dacos and also Walsh, like a lot of people will have, Jagger, Tanner Braun, and also Houston. So I'll take a hit, and I know that, and I know I'll be wearing the green vest, and I'm ready for Calvin to say and do whatever he wants to me, but hopefully in the long term that'll end up all right, because, again, I'll be taking the cash in to hopefully get a big dog, and I think that might be Max Holmes, which my little advantage of already having Nick Dacos, I think my advantage could turn into a nice thing of having a unique there in a Max Holmes who, we look at these game style, I feel like he is someone that it's definitely going to suit with the way that we're going along here. So that's where I'm at the moment. But things change. We get issues. I'm sure, like, if we get another big premium down this week, like we did with Errol, that cash in the bank may burn a big hole in our pocket. But we can't think like that, Drew.
No, don't say it. I don't want to hear it. We've already had bad luck with Errol off the bat.
Yeah.
But yeah, I can't wait for next week. The fact that everyone gets to go shopping for a premium, like, it feels like next week's Christmas.
Yep.
We just got to get through this tough last bit of the working year. This is like a grinding week, and next week's Christmas. We can go shopping and we can buy big dogs for our team. So yeah, let's hope this weekend. Let's just pray for no mishaps, no disasters. And hopefully the fantasy gods shine down upon everyone.
Good luck to the GOATs this week. Make sure you're following everything on social and stay up to date with everything there, including that podcast feed. Go and search that up, GOAT Fantasy, so you aren't missing a thing. Good luck, mate.
On your Warnie. Catch you soon.